there's anybody who had something they wanted to add that I missed. Okay, well, we're very happy to have as our speaker today Dr. Debra Ayres, who is actually the vice president of our chapter. And she is, she has her PhD from UC Davis in botany and also molecular genetics. And did a lot of work with weeds, but she wears many hats. And she's also been doing landscape design since 1983 in the foothills. In fact, she was even in, I think it was the second class of master gardeners in El Dorado County way back when, and was the chief coordinator for several years after that. So she has lots of different interests, from genetics of weeds to botany to landscape design. And so with that, I'm going to turn the screen over to Debra, and let's listen to her speech.
Talk. It's not a speech.
Talk. Yes.
Talk. Come on. Oh boy. All right. I hope everybody can see that. We're full. So this is meant to be a primer, not you're not going to be able to walk out of your house today and design your landscape, but this should give you directions that you should go to. One of the things I advise you to download from our website, and I'll show it in a minute, is the Landscape Questionnaire that I derived several years ago to make sure that I touched all the bases in design and landscape. Our modern California gardens have evolved from work by Thomas Church and Garrett Ekbo in the 40s and the 50s. The description of their goals for a landscape is pretty much the description of what I would do to a landscape design, and possibly other landscape designers would as well. The focus is on functionality and artisticness, where every part of the garden is carefully considered within the context of the climate, the landscape,
so much
lifetime.
Do the work of design.
Excuse me, Debra, just 1 second. Can everybody who is on, except for Debra, please mute yourself? We're hearing background noise coming from people's homes. If everyone else could please mute themselves.
Okay. Thank you. So the modern California garden derives from the 1950s, mid-century modern, I guess. I get inspiration by getting old Sunset books at thrift stores that date from that time and going through the pictures in them. It's quite fascinating to see, excuse me, what was going on back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. They stress a direct indoor-outdoor connection, hardscaping next to the house, that is patios and decks, for seating, small lawns, if any at all, using wooden decks on sloping sites. Shade is provided by trees or overhead truss, quite important in our California climate to provide shade. It incorporates recreational pursuits. Whatever it is that you want to do in your yard has to be in your yard, obviously. A barbecue or a kitchen, a swimming pool, a hot tub, they all can be put down as goals. You might not get them right away, but they're a goal. They really stress parking, excuse me, being basically suburban type gardens. Parking is important, privacy, and then last on the list are plants. So even though we will be talking about native plants later in the talk, plants come last. Now I've done this. I've seen other people do, and perhaps you've done it, where the first shot at your landscape, you plunk them down outside the garage, and then you forgot to, we had no, planted them all, and they were all different kinds without consideration of their eventual size, and you ended up with a mess. So plants are last. These other things must be considered first before you ever buy a single plant. And I just want to say we all break that rule, all of us. So I devised a landscape analysis questionnaire. I'm going to try something tricky here. I'm going to try and share what it looks like, and hopefully you have downloaded it. This is what it looks like, and you can download it from our website. So I'm going to be briefly going over some of the features of this landscape analysis questionnaire. And it was not for you to fill out ahead of time. It's not like a quiz. It's just something that you can go along with if you have it printed out and start addressing yourself to these types of analyses. Okay, let me see. I want to get rid of that without getting rid of and it's red at the top because I didn't buy it. My PowerPoint. So, going through the questionnaire, my first focus when I sit down with someone is to first identify to look like Versailles, or I want this Japanese garden that looks like the one in San Francisco, or whatever. But there are things that will you will not be able to do because of the constraints. Some of these constraints are due to the site, some to the house, and some are imposed by your recreational pursuits. So let's look at some of the site constraints. One of the first things you need to address if you're starting a new garden or even an old garden is how much your property slopes, where the water goes, where erosion soils go, where the water drains. My first landscape attempt in Cameron Park, oh, it was awful. Glad I don't have pictures. But I didn't consider the slope, and I had an upward house, 7 feet above my house, and a slope going up to their house. And we happily went out. My husband probably less happily than I did, and I put in a small lawn, and had all these other things. And then winter came along, and my lawn was covered with 1 inch of silt because I hadn't considered that the lot above me was going to drain and carry soil with it all over my landscape. So first thing to consider is where the water goes, where the soil goes, and how you're going to deal with that erosible slope. Another constraint that affects me is now that I live in shingle, is the soil quality and depth. When they inserted the house pad into the hillside, they scraped all the horizon and left no topsoil. Unfortunately, the people who developed it first brought in 6 to 8 inches of topsoil and laid it over everything. But what that means realistically is that my drought tolerant plants cannot exist in 6 to 8 inches of topsoil. They can't get their roots down far enough to achieve drought tolerance on my soils. So that's just one of those things to keep in mind. If you had the opportunity to scrape off your topsoil as you develop the house lot and then put the topsoil where you're going to garden, that would be ideal. But I don't think that most construction people are going to do that. So your topsoil will go somewhere else, and you will be left with whatever they left. You have, depending on which side of the house you're considering, hot and sunny exposures versus cool and shady exposures. This also is influenced by whether you are on a north-facing or south-facing slope. You'll have a hot site if it's facing south, and a cool site if it's north-facing. And this is important because you want to group plants that have similar cultural requirements all together. So you wouldn't put a rose on the north side of the house because we know they like it to be sunny and moist. Similarly, if you put ferns on a west facing or south, they're going to fry up in the sun. So we have to consider the various microclimates that surround your house and the major climate that is due to which way your hill faces. You want to identify which native trees and shrubs that you want to keep. and which ornamentals you want to keep when you are considering site constraints. Las Pilates Nursery has a page you can go to that has the leaf burn times of California native plants. And this is, it's not a scientific study. It wasn't highly replicated. There was no statistical analysis, but it does give you an idea of how readily certain of our natives will burn. And some of them don't burn readily at all. If you can identify the natives that are going to be a fire hazard, you can either mitigate the hazard or remove it. I'm a little suspicious of our gray pine. I think it's highly flammable, and it can have branches that are close to the ground that could get ignited by a grassland fire. So these are things that you would want to consider when you're looking at your natives. So I want to spend, actually I'm going to spend quite a few minutes on fire. There is an excellent presentation by our own Alice Cantelo on that she presented to the chapter, when was that? A year ago, maybe. Living with Wildfire and Native Plants 2, Fire Hardening Your Home. There are things that you can do to your house that will make it more fire hardened, closing your gutters, making sure the screens on your eaves are small, not having a dry wood siding and so forth that will harden your house against fire. The two kinds of fire that are going to affect you are grassland type fires that sweep across the landscape, low fires. And these are the kind of fires that you can protect against with good landscaping and fire hardening. There's also the kinds of fires like we saw in the Caldor fire, where burning chunks of bark are whizzing a mile in front of the fire. And there's not a whole lot that's going to help you there as these embers rain upon your house. And you'll see that more in just a minute with this video. A number of people have asked, what can I do? My house, there's fire damage, or I want to help the people who have suffered during this fire. What should we be doing? Should we be out there planting oak trees, or what is it? What's to do? How can I help? Which is wonderful. Alice and Kit Veerkamp, who is also on the CNPS board, both of them are also master gardeners, and they are going to be making a presentation on October 6th this year from 5:30 to 8. I'm hoping that the link will be up on our El Dorado CNPS website so that you can sign up for this talk if you are interested. It basically is going to go over a CNPS document, which is available online as a PDF, that talks about what you should do if you've had fire damage. And one of the first things it says is, where does the water go? So erosion and soil movement and water movement are things that are considered first. Now I'm going to go to this video, which I think is excellent. It's about 15 minutes. So let's see if I can do that without too much trouble. Where did it go? And you can see all of my, there it is. Okay. Can you guys see that?
No.
Can you see this video?
Uncontrolled extreme wildfires are inevitable. These are the conditions when wildland urban.
See it now?
The
No.
100.
What are you seeing?
We can hear it, but we can't see it. We can just see your name.
Well, crap.
I think you need to go to YouTube, launch it, and find the video and play it that way.
I already did that.
Destroyed
So
during the wildfire.
I'm on
Does that mean
YouTube.
that the wildland urban interface disasters are inevitable as well? No. We have great opportunities as homeowners to prevent our houses from igniting during wildfires.
So you can just hear it, but you can't see it?
Most of our perceptions
Yes.
are
You can
that
try
these
share
big
screen
wildfires
now
are something we can't do anything about.
choose
They're
the
overwhelming.
video when you share screen again.
Huge organizations can't control the wildfire.
Okay.
How is it that
So I go to, Oop. Well, I'm gonna bail on that. Hopefully I can get my PowerPoint back. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Nope,
No.
no.
Nope.
What do you see?
Black screen. It went away when you started trying to get the video up.
Okay,
So
so
maybe click on the slideshow again.
all right. Here we go. Share screen. So I'm not going to show that video since it messed everything up. But there we go. Are we good?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So here is the URL for that video, and it goes into detail on what you can do to fireproof your house. I had a friend who showed a picture of his cabin up off Highway 50, and leaning against the house was a broom, straw broom with a wooden handle. And this video points out that anything that's flammable sitting right next to your house is basically tinder to set your house on fire. And in fact, his house did burn down. I have no idea whether that broom started it, but his landscape was pretty clean, except it was in the forest and was rained on by embers from the Calder fire. So do take a look at that, if especially if you live in the forest. So turning now again to the questionnaire. You want to examine your house and how it is oriented on your property, its orientation to climate. I have a north-south house, which means I have an east-west exposures and north-south exposures, a little bit off direct north-south. But you can then, using a compass, you can see which are going to be the hot areas and the cool areas. So some of those rooms are going to be hot. The southwestern exposure is particularly tricky in the summer. Some of those rooms are going to be cool. If you don't like to be woken up by the morning sun coming through your windows, that's something to consider. Which rooms have access to the outside? Because that's where you're going to interact with your landscaping. What kind of street frontage do you have? Is it a corner lot? So you have 240 degrees of street frontage? Are you on a cul-de-sac? Are your neighbors noisy? There's not a lot you can do about noisy neighbors, unfortunately. Just like if you're too close to a street that's busy, sound is one of the hardest things to block in landscaping. Something to consider when you buy your property, that that road isn't going away. Are there rooms that lack privacy or don't have good views? And how are you going to deal with these various constraints? What do you want to do out in your yard? When I first started in this, I was all about, well, do you want a play area for the children or pathways for them to ride their trike bikes? And now that I'm a senior, I'm thinking, well, maybe I don't want stairs. You know, you don't want to go up 2 flights of stairs to get to your deck or get down from your deck. So now and in the future or currently, what kind of access? What do you need out there? Decks and patios, where would you like to put them? Swimming pool or a spa? Where's the parking going to go? The functional areas, like if you like to dry your clothes on a line, where are you going to put your garbage cans? Are you going to have a vegetable garden, fruit trees, and or some garden structures, a playhouse or a gardening shed? So one of the trickiest aspects of designing your landscape is to know what kind of style, you could have sort of an idea where you're going to want your patios and where you're going to put your spas, sort of.
I thought this was going to be more about plants.
But what style is that?
They can hear you. Shut
If you could mute yourself, whoever, someone is talking, and I'd appreciate it if you'd mute yourself. So this is an excellent article from Pacific Horticulture, which you can look at. He discusses different kinds of style and how the style should match the architecture of your house. And he offers these 3 standard kind of landscape designs. This one would work well with a more formal house. This is informal, and this is a little off kilter. So if we look at these, we can see 3 patios that are arranged in 3 different places, sort of. We have the main patio off the house, and the kitchen might be right here. So this patio here might be where you want to put your barbecue and a table, outdoor kitchen, and so forth. This one is very formal and symmetrical. All of them have hedges to get some privacy into the backyard. This one achieves it through total symmetry. The soaking tub is almost completely obscure. This one, it is completely obscure. This is where the nude bathers go. This would be where you want to wear a swimsuit, since it's right next to the focal point. So these are, people would say to me, well, I want a natural garden. I don't want squares or angles or whatever. So this would be perfect. No squares or angles. However, keep in mind that it's a lot easier to deal with right angles and squares and lines than it is to deal with these curvy form outlines. Come back to this in a minute. So the design specifics in trying to determine just what you want in the landscape. You've kind of made a list of the things you have to do and the things that you want. How do you know what you really like? What is your personal style? And it used to be that I had a binder full of pretty pictures from Sunset Magazine, photographs of gardens, and sticky notes. And I would have people go through it, and they would put a sticky note on the various pictures that appealed to them, sometimes even specific plants. Well, I like the red leaves of this purple leaf plum or whatever. They would have plants. They would have paving materials that they particularly like. We'd identify these paper photographs of their particular tastes. And nowadays, what I do is you go through Google. You do a Google search, say front yard patio, if you think that sounds good. And then you'll see so many pictures of front yard patios, and they will appeal to you, and you click on them and you copy them and you paste them into a file. So you end up with a portfolio of gardens, plants, paving, etc., that appeal to you. So instead of going through, somebody else's pictures like we did initially, now you will come up with your own pictures. I want to talk a minute about paving. It's very important that you consider how you will get from one place to another in your garden. If you are stuck with what the builders have given you, you'll have a 2.5 foot wide straight walkway going to your house, when realistically it should be 4 feet wide, so 2 people can walk side by side comfortably and don't have to be studying the ground to make sure they don't step into the shrubbery. That you are not given that in a standard suburban house. Areas where you are going to want to walk to, these have hard pavers. But here, when we get to this chillin' patio, It's gone down to something informal, perhaps decomposed granite or pea gravel or something like that. So it's the style and the width, the size of the pathway kind of determines which path you'll take, or vice versa. The path that you take will determine the material of it and the width. In this freeform, informal, casual, organic, he calls it, you can see we have hard paving, flagstones on the patio. Again, you probably have to look at your feet there. And then it immediately goes into a very informal, perhaps decomposed granite or pebbled pathway. And this requires that you watch your feet, that you look at the plants, that you slow down as you slowly move through the garden. So the size and the durability of the paving for the pathways and for the patios kind of determines how quickly you're going to rush through the garden. These folks, they want to immediately get out to the soaking tub, whereas they're a little more casual about getting out to the chilling patio. So paving, though we don't think about it, it's something that should be of concern. So plant selection, if you want native plants in your yard, if you want drought tolerance, if you want them to be your plants attractive to birds and or other pollinators, and that are plants that you like. So here we get down to kind of a list of plants that you're going to want to incorporate into your garden. If you want to look at some books, Thomas Church and Garrett Ekbo are probably the founders of our modern California gardens. Not a lot of pictures, a lot of text. Glenn Keeter and Arlie Middlebrook, they have a book, Designing California Native Gardens. If, for example, you wanted to create an oak woodland look for your landscape, they would help you with that design and also suggest the plants that would go in a sort of manicured oak woodland. What's in our oak woodlands is a European annual grasses typically, which is perhaps not what we would want for our own gardens. We might want to incorporate native grasses that come from oak woodlands. So we're trying for a more managed native landscape that incorporates the natives that are associated with each other in nature. It's a cool approach. If you live in the chaparral, why not have a chaparral type part of your yard that has plants from the chaparral, redbud, manzanita, and so forth, so that your yard can be kind of a stopping place for animals that require that kind of native vegetation. And the top designer in our area is Michael Glassman, and this book has lots of pictures of gardens that you can't afford. They have water features. They have outdoor gardens, outdoor kitchens that you wouldn't believe. So if you have a lot of money, those are the kind of gardens he designs. Again, with Michael Glassman, he's got a nice website that has videos, and it's got designs and images. This is just a little picture of his website. These are his landscape styles. This is contemporary. If you are interested in putting a label to whatever landscape design you're coming up with, these are his labels. There are videos. You can see landscape features that you might want to incorporate into your landscape design. So I'm going to go to a specific example. This is Glenda's garden. Glenda is I know of no one who exceeds her as a plantswoman or a plants person. She has visited so many gardens and collected plants from gardens, from gardeners, from seed sources, native plants, ornamental plants. She experiments with plants and has done for 25 years. She's just amazing. So the plant styles that you're going to see are Glenda's. I wouldn't I wouldn't even begin to know how to, well, I gave her a few hints, but the garden is all her work. So this is in Hollywood Park down in Sacramento. Her house was a typical 3-bedroom, 1-bath Hollywood Park house. And you can see from the neighborhood that what they gave them was a lawn, and I think it's a sycamore lawn. That's the landscaping with some sort of foundation shrubbery type stuff here. So that's typical of this entire neighborhood, is a lawn and a shade tree. And Glenda's was no different. So what we first did is I went to Google Earth and I got a clear image of her property. This is before any work was done. So here's the corner that she lives on. Here's her house. You can see it's lawn everywhere. Lawn. Some trees that had been planted. This was either sycamore or an ash. And every year it just dumped leaves all over the place. The sick leaves, because the plant gets sick in Sacramento. That was the tree that they planted 50 years ago, and it turned out that it was not quite suited to Sacramento, so it was diseased. So I got this picture from Google Earth, and I put a piece of tracing paper over it, and I traced in the house and the existing vegetation. This is the house. You come up the front walk, which you can't quite see in the picture. Bedroom, living room, bedroom, house, bedroom, dining room. She had a covered walkway going to the garage. And so we went through the questionnaire and we identified the things that she did not like about her landscape. She hated that tree, dropping leaves all the time. They had a front walk that, well, Michael Glassman calls it like a tongue sticking out of the front door. Narrow, boring, well, you saw it. The landscape, the front landscape was completely open to the street. And it had a little teeny tiny porch right next to the front door. It was about 3 feet wide, so you might have squished a chair in there, but then it had a railing. So it was not something anywhere that you would want to sit. And it had lawn everywhere. So here was the landscape solution. To remove that ash tree, and she actually had it ground down, and then she covered all the dead and dying trunk and roots with a mound. This is what gardeners and doctors do. We bury the mistakes. And we had a new welcoming walk that is a lot wider. This is her walkway, a lot wider, that takes you from the sidewalk to the front door. We created a mound at the corner to provide a privacy screen and a buffer from the street. And I should say that this is a neighborhood where people do sit on their front porch and say howdy to the neighbors as they walk by with their dogs. So it's not like you wanted to put a big fence up and exclude yourself from the neighbors. You wanted to join the neighbors, but not necessarily have them, directly across a front lawn from you. So the porch was way too small. So we wanted to expand the porch by putting a little piece of decking in there. Took out the railing. It's not a high porch, only maybe 1.5 feet. And then removing the lawn and replacing it with mostly natives and decorative aggregates. She was a fiend for aggregates, I gotta say. She was more fiendish about aggregates than I would have been, and you'll see. So here's the ash tree. This is the ash tree that was cut down. And I was reluctant to cut down her tree. Any drop of shade in Sacramento is to be welcome. But she was just so tired of messing with the disease and whatnot. She wanted it gone. And she ended up planting an oak tree right there in the middle of one of her front meadows. So ash tree gone and buried. Here's the mound that she put over the remains of the dead ash tree. And then she put in these new concrete steps that lead you from the sidewalk to the front walkway. So this is what it looked like before, with this tongue sticking out of the doorway. And then this is what it looked like later. So she created a mound on the corner. This is what it looks like when it was probably 1 year old. So here's the mound. And then she planted, this is a native deer grass. It provides a screen for the front porch, which is right there, without being unwelcoming. So just to show the contrast, this is the neighbor across the street, sort of same deal. So just a dying lawn on a corner and complete visual access to the front door from all sides, really. So how did she make that mound? Well, she hired her brother with some piece of equipment that cut the lawn into these long strips, which he rolled up. And then we put the rolled up lawn right here. So instead of hauling that rolled up lawn to the dump, we put it there, and then she buried it. So the mound sort of came from the house and took care of all the grass clippings and whatnot. Now you may wonder how well plants can grow when they're, basically the foundation of the mound is a bunch of rolled up lawn. And I kind of wanted that too, but it turned out they grew just fine. That stuff rotted and formed good soil, and she put soil on top. It all worked. And here's some of the aggregates that she used to replace the lawn. As I said, she kind of went crazy with the aggregates. So here's how well the deer grass grew on the mound. Not a problem. This is a lavender. This is a salvia. Here she's got some prostrate manzanita growing in the aggregate. So she kind of went crazy with the aggregates. I think it works. I like it, but I would not have gone with that many different aggregates. You want to kind of unify your landscape by having similar features scattered throughout the landscape that kind of pull it together. But Glenda, she was wild for aggregates. So that squatty concrete deck right here, this porch, whatever it was, she enlarged it with a half circle about 4 feet wide, which allowed people to sit on chairs with a little table, have a glass of wine. And I wanted to specifically say, this is a north side porch. Here is the direction arrow. I just sketch. I don't design anymore. I just kind of sketch. Sort of eyeball the scale and put in the direction. This is the best place to have a patio in Sacramento and here as well. This is the north side of the house, protected by part of the house. And this part of the house, it's the coolest place to sit of an evening. She did have a covered breezeway, but again, it's the kind of neighborhood where people sit out and say howdy. And indeed, that's what she does. She sits out here and says howdy. Actually, she sold this house and bought another one. And is engaged in another massive landscaping project, to which I said, are you nuts? You have the perfect landscape. And now you're going to sell your house? Oh, man. Anyway, same Hollywood Park neighborhood. So here you sit on the deck, and these are azaleas that she took out. They constructed the deck, and then she put them back. So this is a shade garden. These are not natives, of course. It's a Japanese maple. And you can look out across these various aggregates to the mound and see the mound, and these shrubs provide just a kind of a lacy curtain, a little buffer from the street, but still she can see all the neighbors. So again, with the decorative cobbles, oh my God. So this is the before and after picture. This is before, and then this is after, and it was just planted. So we have these mounds, 2 mounds with the new walkway stepping between the mounds, taking you to the front door. This is, and we could talk a while about whether you should use wheat cloth or not. and maybe we will. She used weed cloth under her aggregates to keep the weeds down. And that's what it looked like when it was growing in. And you can see this landscape evolution. In Google Earth, they have the option of when you click on view, you can get historical views. And so here is 2011. This was when I met with her. She had already transformed this back lawn, as you remember, into a little meander among a lot of native plants. This was her growing area. She would propagate all these plants and then test them out in her yard, see if they work, see if they didn't work. If you're wondering what these are broken clay pots. She had problems with the neighborhood cats leaping over the fence, and that kind of put the end to those neighborhood cat problems. They didn't want to jump on those broken clay pots. So here we are in progress. She did put down weed cloth on the mounds, you can see. Here's the walkway, the tree is gone. And now we're fully planted in 2013. And here in 2018 is what it looked like. And that's what it looked like in 2013. So it was recently planted, and I think it looks darn good. These are some other views. This was also, I identified this as a problem, that this front bedroom had no privacy. And so we put in a, good heavens, a madrone and pruned it up high so that would be, provide some privacy. Here's her cute little deck, and look at, she's got her little rocker bench, azaleas again. Here's the deer grass that buffers the front mound. And I put this picture in. This is again the new walkway that kind of walks you around this mound. This is Majorcan Germander. It is not a native. I love this plant. Green Acres has it in a six pot. I love this plant. There's probably maybe 3 plants here. It spreads widely and flowers all the time. And one of my concerns, one of my constraints, is I have herds of deer moving through my front yard every day. They don't eat it. So you have your own set of constraints. Mine is I've got a deer herd. The second example I want to show you is what I call the outside of the box patio. This again was in Hollywood Park. They'd seen Glenda's landscape and said, oh, hey, that's pretty cool. And so we got together. This house is on a corner lot again. Huge street frontage. The back of the house here is this very narrow tunnel, and then you hit the fence for the neighbor's house. So just amazingly long street frontage. So I've since designed for them the front, but it's taking them a bit longer to get that done. They had a concrete slab between the garage and their house. They park the car in the garage and need to travel to the laundry room, which is right there, and the kitchen is right there. So this is where they come out to barbecue, through the laundry room. These are things you want to consider when you site your barbecue area. You kind of want it to be close to the kitchen. Just, yeah, for convenience. So here they had this slab of concrete that connected the house and the garage, and they put up umbrellas and whatnot. And this was basically the only enclosed area where their little girl could ride her tricycle and play in a safe environment. There's a fence here, and she can't get out the backyard. So this was what they wanted right away. They wanted shade out there. They wanted area for outdoor dining and a barbecue. They wanted the safe place for their little girl to ride her trike. And there had to be the connection from the garage door to the house. And they were also succulent fans. And they wanted spaces for succulents. So, excuse me, I had them, we went through some some Google images. They went through some Google images. And this is what they liked. They like this one. They like this overhead patio. They like the firmness and this overhead on the patio to provide shade. They also really like kind of informal seating with decomposed granite. And they didn't want formal, it was kind of loosely informal beds. And they also like this flagstone look. So these were some of the things that they had identified that they liked and wanted to do out there. So this is, I flipped that patio 45 degrees, put an overhead. So now they come down these stairs from their laundry room. There's the barbecue and the garage. And then by flipping it on, it's at an angle like this, it created deep beds in the corners, deep beds in the corners, and room enough for a DG patio, little informal patio. I wanted them to use the concrete that they broke up, and it's called urban flagstone. And the concrete is laid like you would flagstone to form a pathway. I've seen it used to great effect in a couple of landscapes. I thought it was very cool. I don't think they ever did that. But again, another bed here that connects with this shady side yard. So that's what just a quick and dirty sketch. Again, I should point out, this is the north arrow, this is east, and this is west. And the western exposure is a terrible problem, as you all know, if you try and have a patio with a western exposure. So this is the Google Earth image of what it looked like after. Here's the overhead, and here is one corner of the patio poking out, and then here's the little DG patio, planter beds, and then this is a gate, brand new fence, which was nice, and a walkway and DG going to this patio. And what it looked like on the ground was this. So this is overheads, beams for the overhead, brand new fence, which was great. Here is their little DGC area, which, given in the winter, this is a wonderful exposure because it gets a lot of sun back there. And here are these planting beds. I'm sorry, could you please mute yourself? I don't need music. Thank you. So again, here's a close-up of that little DG patio. And here are succulent beds. And here's this kind of rangy free-form perennial bed, which looks like the picture that they picked out. And here's their little girl with her tricycle. It came out really charming, but I want to point out, these are curtains because the western exposure was just brutal. Ultimately, I recommended they plant a deciduous tree outside the fence somewhere in here to provide some sort of blockage of that fierce sun. The immediate solution was to put curtains up. I usually don't design curtains in a landscape. I saw from Google Earth, and I don't want you to think that I'm a creeper, but I did look, okay. They now have a fabric overhead, a sailcloth fabric overhead over this entire patio to take care of that western exposure. So why should we use native plants in our landscape? Glenda's landscape, by the way, was featured in the Sacramento CNPS home tour in, I think, 2013. Half of the plants are native, and that was the requirement. Over half the plants in the garden are native and half are not. So she qualified for a display garden for that home tour, and it was really cool. But if we select plants that are adapted to our climate, this would be especially local natives, then they're going to be happy here. Many of our natives are drought tolerant. There are many natives that are not drought tolerant. You see them on creek beds, willows, alders, cottonwood. I don't think I'd recommend cottonwood for a landscape, but alders and perhaps willows might do well in a lawn watering type situation. They need a lot of water. Or if you have drainage issues in the sumpy area, they might help to dewater parts of your landscape. So not all natives are going to be drought tolerant. It depends on where they grow. If they grow on the dry hillsides, then they are. If they grow in the creek beds, they're not. Aesthetically, many natives are beautiful, especially the ones that are commercially available. You know, nurserymen want to sell plants. They don't want to sell something that looks scraggly and awful. And certainly there are natives that look scraggly and awful. And luckily they're not commercially available. They pick the ones that are nice, that are relatively easy to grow. And there are sound ecological reasons why you should use native plants. Doug Tallamy has been an advocate for many years of removing lawns. He says if everybody removed half their lawn and replaced it with natives, it would form a national park bigger than all of our national parks combined. So millions and millions of acres of natives if we just took out half our lawns, which would be cool. Lawns, I gotta say, they have their place. They are a bit of an ecological null. The only native animal that seems to take great advantage of our lawns are pocket gophers, which is not a good thing. I have a little bit of front lawn because my deer herd loves it. You know, people hate the deer, people love the deer. I'm in the latter camp. I love the deer. I love watching these animals interact with each other, and they flop down on my lawn. It's on eastern exposure, so it's nice and cool on a hot summer day. And I never mow it during the growing season because the deer eat it. So I love the deer, and so I have a little bit of lawn for the deer. Also, lawns next to the house are a great fire preventative. You water the lawn and fire doesn't get started there. I have another lawn in my backyard that I cut in half because the only people that walked on it were the people who were mowing the lawn. And I really don't know what to do with the other half of it. It's a conduit between the house and the swimming pool. And I'll get to it one day. Doug has a number of reasons why we should use native plants. Specialized relationships that have developed through evolutionary time. They've evolved in concert with local animals. There are specialized food relationships that support complex food webs. Our yards and gardens are part of the ecosystem. We are not separate from it. We can use our residential landscapes to connect isolated habitat fragments, stepping stones or hopping stones or resting places for native animals moving through the suburbs into our gardens. Our gardens can be part of the way that they can get to where they need to be. We have a moral and ecological responsibilities, perhaps. What should you plant if you want to get maximum bang for the buck? Now Tallamy, he regards insects on trees as baby bird food, which is a good way of looking at it. So if you have a plant that supports a lot of worms, then those worms supply food to a lot of baby birds. So the top one is oaks. Now these are East Coast numbers. I don't know what the corresponding West Coast numbers are, but oaks support the most worm larvae, Lepidoptera, butterflies, moths, over 500 back east. Baby bird food. The acorns support deer, turkey, mice, and squirrels. The holes provide nesting sites for birds. and it's a physical habitat for birds and squirrels. They live in trees. And if you've been here long, you know that the deer just savage acorns. In late August, when there's that any kind of native forage is gone and they're eating your garden, they're waiting for the acorn drop. And this year has been very poor around my elevation in Shingle Springs. I've had a reliable oak tree for 12 years, producing massive amounts of acorns, hardly any this year. It's we had a heat spell of over 100 degrees for a week. The leaves started to drop, and I think at that point, the fruit, the acorn was setting in the female flowers and aborted. So many of them aborted in the heat, as plants will sometimes do. When it gets hot, they abort their fruit, their seeds. And I think we lost a lot of our acorn production in that hot spell. So the deer have been especially starving this year because of the lack of acorns. But nonetheless, they're out there sniffing out every single acorn they can find and chomping through them. I don't even know how oak seedlings make it, since the acorns are so avidly consumed. Willows is another species, another type of plant that supports a lot of lepidopteran species, a lot of worms, cherries and plums also. And if they produce berries, then that feeds the berry-eating birds in the summer. Poplars and cottonwoods also support a lot of worms. Again, these poplars, cottonwoods, and willows should be used in wet areas. If you're interested in kind of some of a background of what kind of birds are, or what kind of insects are supported by what kind of trees, we have some presentations in 2018 on our website, eldorado-cnps.org. Bird-Friendly Landscapes was presented, what was her name? Her first name? Nancy Gilbert from the Redbud chapter, an amazing presentation. We had a speaker on monarch butterflies, which are unfortunately tanking. Plants and pollinators were spoken of by Dylan Burge. He's focused on bees, and John Kipping gave a presentation on oaks. These are as PDFs, they're not videos, but present a lot of background information. So how do you choose your native plants? There is a site, Calscape. Just search it on Google, and you can put in your zip code, and it will spew out all the plants that are native to that particular zip code. This is a shingle, and you can further specify whether you want trees or shrubs, annuals, perennials, grasses, and it will limit them down to whatever you need. And what we did a couple years ago was to go through CalFlora and come up with this list of plants that we recommend. We highly recommend to you. There was a committee with landscape designers and garden aficionados coming up with their favorite plants, again, suitable to our general Placerville elevation. And we classified them a common name, botanical name. We have trees, large shrubs, medium shrubs, etc. Evergreen or deciduous, whether they are local. So if you wanted to recreate a plant community in your yard, you would select the ones that have a Y. Yes, they are local here. This is the exposure, sun, full sun, shade, part shade. So you want to select plants that are going to be culturally compatible. Plants that like shade and water should be grouped together and separate from plants that like sun and no water. So you can create an irrigation regime and an exposure regime suitable for each of for various areas of your garden. Here is the water requirement. So again, if you're going to be low, you'd select that. If it's going to be moderate, then you could select that. For example, here, spice bush likes a moderate amount of water. The height and the width that the plant will get, one of the big mistakes people make are, well, let's put a plant that's 10 foot wide and space them 3 feet apart. See, that's not going to work. You don't accommodate the eventual mature size, you're going to end up either removing plants or your life with the hedge clippers, trying to keep them in shape. Whether they have flowers and what color, whether they're attractive to birds. So that would be those that where they provide nest or forage for the larvae, or berries. Whether bees are attracted to and supported by the plants, or whether butterflies are. So if you wanted to make a butterfly garden, you would focus on those plants that provide food for butterflies. So this is very cool. If you go to the plant sale, you will get one of these for free, or you can download it from our website. But we got a grant that allowed us to make a lot of our publications free to the public. This is a website supported by the CNPS that is in transition. We do not have an entry on this site. When we came up with our list, it was pointed out far and wide that the planting guides that they were recommending didn't take into account fire safety. It's really kind of cool because people ask, well, you know, I know the plants I like, but I don't know how to arrange them so that they make sense visually or functionally. I just don't know how to go about doing that. Well, these vignettes that I'm going to show you actually take some of the questions and addresses some of the questions. What plants grow well with what other plants? In these, and again, that's this website here, and you have to give your name and then they send you a link through email. It's still available online, even though it's not fully sanctioned anymore. They consider various characteristics, including water needs, as you just saw in our list, various landscape vignettes and design templates. They discuss grass removal, soil quality, mulch, hardscaping, and how to create habitat. So I'm going to show you, this one was created by our neighboring chapter, Redbud, and so many of their plants, if not all of their plants, are completely suitable for us in Placerville elevation. So these are project ideas that they have. A wildlife walkway, what they call a homey habitat with a bench and a fountain, the colorful entry, living wall, and pollinator park. And what they do is kind of brilliant. Here is the pollinator park, which they put right next to where you park. So my husband, who's allergic to bee stings, would not be very happy to have a buzzing pollinator garden right next to where he gets out of his car. So something to think about. But in each of these vignettes, you can see the symbols, colors, size, and these symbols correspond to, so this green one is a large shrub. So right here, and this is the, what is this? The wildlife walkway in this Burgundy area. They would recommend a Howard McMinn manzanita, white leaf manzanita, western redbud, hoary coffeeberry, toyon, or mock orange. So that's what that symbol denotes, this list of shrubs, which they like. And similarly for each of these symbols and colors, it denotes a set of 5 or 6 species that would be suitable. Now this thing right here, this tree, that is mountain mahogany, or Pacific dogwood. So you have a whole list of plants and where they actually go. And here are the dimensions right here. So you know how big the area is. And I think it's actually kind of brilliant because one of the questions that I'm asked frequently is, well, I have this 12 by 12 area that I want to plant, and I want it to be a pollinator garden. And so then you go, okay, these are the plants that would be suitable, the plant sizes and their arrangement. Now, the reason why this is no longer state of the art, I want you to tell me why this is no longer considered an acceptable design. The house is right here, now garage house. So think about why you shouldn't do this. Well, because it's not fire safe. It's generally thought that you want to keep the first 5 feet next to your house free of anything flammable, which could be vegetation. Planting plants this close to your house wall is not fire safe. So, you need to think about your fire vulnerability and whether you could actually, or whether you should actually have a planting that crams things right up against the house. So again, those various symbols here, you see this is deciduous and evergreen shrubs. These are small shrubs, evergreen and deciduous. So I'll go back up to the picture. So the little orange ones right here are little evergreen shrubs, such as Pacific Miss Manzanita, lemon ceanothus, and another ceanothus. So properly spaced, same culture, whatever. It's kind of a cool starting point, and it should give you some idea of how you arrange your plants in your yard. Where do you see these native gardens? Well, it just so happens that the El Dorado CNPS has revamped the Xeriscape garden using native plants at the Placerville Library. And it's called the Nature Nook. And it is open 24/7, 365. Well, maybe not 24. I know the cops might roust you if you were there at 3 o'clock in the morning. In any case, it's open every day. It's a small garden with a path through it. There's lots of great signage to explain why various plants are planted together. And we have a pollinator garden outside the children's library, so the children can come to appreciate the value of pollinators. We have a meadow garden that's underneath the oaks, so you can see how the kind of landscaping kind of garden you could have under your oaks without too much water. So it's a cool place. It has not officially opened because of COVID. One day we might have an official opening, but you're free to walk around anytime. And there's a little postcard inside that you can get for free that explains what's going on. The Sherwood Demonstration Garden is built and run by the Master Gardeners of El Dorado County. There are 16 themed educational gardens, and my Lord, it's fantastic. Oh my God. Alice Cantelo orchestrated the native garden, so you can see what these natives look like in a garden and contrasted with various other kinds of gardens. I don't know the hours it's open. It used to be, I think, Saturday, maybe Friday, maybe odd Fridays and Saturdays. I don't know what it is now during where we are. Maybe Alice can mention when that Sherwood Demonstration Garden is open. Gardens Gone Native, Sacramento, did not have a tour this year because of COVID, or did they have one last year? I think it was only virtual last year. If you put in Sac Valley Garden Tours, just search on that, you will get a gallery of past tours so that you can take a look at some of these native gardens. And this is that urban flagstone I was telling you about, broken up concrete that's pieced together and kind of looks like flagstone. They busted up a patio out here and made this pathway with the urban flagstone in I think it's pea gravel. Quite amazing. So these are where you can see them. And I think this was the house with the patio and the extremely large frontage. Anyway, I'll go back here and say thank you for your attention. Are there questions? Oh, I got chats. Okay. My internet keeps, that's annoying. I went to Sherwood on Saturday. I think it was open one Saturday a month.
Actually,
Alice, would
yeah,
you
sure.
know?
It's open now. It changes now and again, but right now it's open Friday and Saturdays from 9 in the morning till 12, and that's going to be through October. And then it's closed until March, and then it just opens again March through October. Except, like you say, there is one Saturday. I think it's the second Saturday of the month that it's actually open during the winter also.
Very cool. Thank you so much. I'm looking at the chat, and somebody has posted a YouTube fire resiliency, hardening your home and creating defensible space. So there's a link there. As soon as we shut down, all those things disappear. So take a look through the chat if you can. Here, Kit has posted the link to register for the homeowner's guide to fire recovery. I tried to get to the UCA in our site multiple times today and could not, so hopefully it's working. Let's see. I couldn't share the videos.
One thing on that UCNR is they've been having terrible problems with some hacking, and it's not clear that they will be open that way for a while. Hopefully soon. They've been hacked for a while.
So if you're interested, I want you to scroll through the chat so you can get these links. And someone says, Alice says, I just want to mention that there are cases of homes with good defensible space and were well hardened that survived wildfires in Woodlands, including the Calder fire, when nearby homes did not survive. If you look at the damage assessment at Grizzly Flats, that who did that? I think Cal Fire put out a map showing the homes that were destroyed and the homes that survived. And most of the homes, of course, did not survive. And I kind of wondered, those few houses that did manage to make it, what was different about them that they survived that raging inferno that developed the first few days of the Calder fire? And it could be that they had the defensible space or was just lucky. Okay, so there's a couple more. Kit says the link for the fire recovery presentation now works. If you go to it, Virginia says, thanks, Virginia. So if there's any questions and you want to just speak up. Hello.
Well, thank you, Deborah. That was really fun to get to see all the different landscapes that you showed us and to hear all your ideas on how we can design this. Are there any questions? Anybody wants to ask a question? You can do that in person right now if you'd like. Otherwise, we really want to give her a hand here and thank you. And our next general meeting will be in 2 months from now. It will be again virtually. And Deborah, did you want to let us know what the topic is on that?
Yeah, it will be, instead of the fourth Tuesday, it will be the third Tuesday because fourth Tuesday is Thanksgiving week. So it's the week before Thanksgiving. And we have a worldwide known professor from the University of Wisconsin at Madison coming all the way via Zoom from Wisconsin to talk about the evolution of our calicortus. Calicortus are Mariposa lilies or cat's lilies, are beautiful wildflowers in the spring. He has been studying them for quite a while, and he's going to talk about how the various evolutionary routes that they took. So it should be great. So
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay, and thank you. And now whoever's inspired, you can go out and buy some plants at the plant sale if you'd like. But thank you all for coming tonight, and we will hope to see you in the future. Thank you very much. And thank you, Deborah.
Thanks, Alice.